In December 2022, I was creating a video about the Microsoft Attack Simulator. It's a video where I talk and demonstrate about the strengths of the Attack Simulator and show some cool features. One of those features is how you can basically copy any phishing email and copy paste it into the Attack Simulator and make it your own. Whilst I was doing that, I noticed something strange. Exactly in this part of the Attack Simulator, I suddenly had a new feature, let's say. I'll zoom in more on that, but that triggered a whole chain of events. To be more precise, when you go to the Attack Simulator, and I was just copy pasting some code, and this is a demo, and whilst I was copy pasting some HTML, I noticed a pop-up. I noticed that I could invoke cross-site scripting. Well, as far as I could understand. You see, I'm not a red teamer, I'm a blue teamer. But I did had some basic knowledge back when I was in college, where they explained me the basics of cross-site scripting. But that was a long time ago. So I had to refresh that and get my basics of JavaScript back in order to understand what I was seeing and how I can, well, abuse it. So I went back to my good old friend W3schools, where I refreshed my basic knowledge about cross-site scripting and JavaScript, because I needed to come up with a plan that would allow me to abuse this bug in order to be eligible for a great bug bounty. So I started to work. Bug bounty hunting is basically a big competition. If you're the first to see it and first to report it, well, then you're the one who gets fully acknowledged for it. And I wasn't that experienced, so I didn't have that much time. So I spent 4 days and 4 nights figuring out what I could do. So cross-site scripting is a vulnerability where when you have a website where you allow user input and you allow users to insert their own code, like I'm doing right here, and I'm inserting a script tag and I'm adding my own code that I want to execute, the website has a vulnerability that it doesn't sanitize these kind of inputs. So basically I can run my own scripts, but Microsoft blocked this. They removed my script tags when I entered them. So Microsoft does have protection against cross-site scripting on their website. But when I look back at the original payload which showed the vulnerability, I noticed something. You see, HTML objects, for example loading audio or loading an image, you can set an action when there is an error. For example, when there is an error, please execute this piece of code. And this was something that they forgot to sanitize. And that was my initial way in on abusing this bug. There were about 50 HTML tags that weren't properly sanitized by the cross-site scripting protection of Microsoft, and I used those to create 2 attack paths. The first scenario I worked out was when a user would visit the webpage where I injected some code, I would read out his cookie. In that cookie there is the user his identity in the form of an access token. The access token contains the identity and the current permissions of that user. And I would simply take that cookie and perform a web request to a listener I had somewhere in Azure. In Azure side, I just could read out a cookie, meaning that I could steal the session of a user using that session token. Okay, so the second scenario I worked out was loads of fun. So you know, the Attack Simulator, it sends phishing emails which have a 100% guarantee rate of delivering to the end user. So I made a phishing email where they had to go to a URL and they ended up to a landing page of Microsoft. The page you see here is hosted by Microsoft, but I injected some JavaScript on those landing pages that would automatically download a file. In this case it's just a simple doc file, but this could have been a malware sample. And this is a great scenario. If it would ever fall into wrong hands, you would be able to deliver malware samples to a complete environment, bypassing every email security part, because these emails are directly delivered into the mailbox of the users. And the pages the user visit, well, they are Microsoft pages, so it would only be the antivirus who would be capable of detecting my attack. Now that I have technically validated and I'm sure that my attack scenarios work, I had to write a report. So I had to create an account on the Microsoft Bug Bounty portal where I had to explain how my vulnerability works, how I abused it, and show evidence. And then the waiting game began. The Microsoft Bug Bounty team acknowledged my report, but they first had to validate it with the product team to see if this was indeed a valid case. After that, they really acknowledged my case and awarded me with a bug bounty. But that was not the end, because I couldn't talk about it yet. First, they had to fix it before I was allowed to talk about this vulnerability. So this vulnerability has already been fixed and been removed, otherwise I wouldn't be allowed to disclose this information. Even though my 2 vulnerabilities were accepted, I did not make it to the Reseacher leaderboard. This because I was abusing, well, a main vulnerability and then had a second vulnerability that was accepted, but it was seen as a child vulnerability. All of these rules, well, the rule of the child vulnerability isn't written down here, but you can basically calculate your own score on this page, and you need 20 points in order to be accepted on the leaderboard. If my 2 scores would be individually being accepted, I would have had 30 points, but sadly enough, only 1 was accepted, so I ended up with 15 points. And this brings me to the end of my video. I really hope you enjoyed my content. A lot of effort went into this one over time, finding the bug bounty and then creating this video afterwards, looking through all of my documentation and recordings to make this storyline happen. Thank you very much. If you consider liking or subscribing, it's very much appreciated, and see you next time.